Beta readers critical to your writing process? Let's talk about it. In this video, I'm going to break down what beta readers are, why they're important, and I'll also share about my own experience having recently used beta readers for my book, Write with Intention. So hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm your book coach and developmental editor, and I help primarily women write, edit, and publish books that inspire and create impact in this world. You, like many writers, are pouring your heart into your book. You've been revising, maybe you've been editing, and maybe that leads to a little bit of second guessing. That is very common in the writing journey. And before you hit publish, if you're self-publishing, or before you send out all of your submissions, we want to make sure you haven't missed anything that's glaringly obvious, right? We don't want giant plot holes in our books, or maybe there's themes in your nonfiction book that just aren't connecting, or we're not sure why they're there. So what can be really helpful is including beta readers. So what is a beta reader? A beta reader is someone who's going to read your manuscript before it's published. So this is after your first draft, potentially, likely after your second or third draft. If you go straight from your first draft into beta readers, you might not get the feedback at the right time in your writing process. It just might be too early. So you want to have gone through your manuscript multiple times so that you feel it's as close to being publishing ready as possible before working with a beta reader. So think of beta readers really as your test audience. So you're getting a sense of what are people's response to my writing? Is there anywhere that they're getting stuck? Is there anywhere that they really loved? Are they getting confused by anything? So all of these are little clues that just let you know, are there any opportunities for further clarity in your book? And have they identified anything that maybe you just weren't aware was taking place in your book? So beta readers, I don't want to be confused with editors or proofreaders. So they're not necessarily there to tell you that your grammar is incorrect, or it's really looking more at that bigger picture of hey, this is working, this isn't working, I don't understand what's happening here. It's that higher 10,000 foot view, similar to what I do with that as a developmental editor. So again, they are sort of your test audience too. So you want to make sure hey, does my genre land with them? They love reading this genre. So I want to make sure that this is a book that they would recommend to other people. So why do beta readers matter? So they can see what you can't see. This is a big one. So whether you are writing fiction or nonfiction, there are many benefits to having beta readers. So really thinking about what is the things that might be missing. So in fiction, you might have plot holes or unclear motivations in your characters, or just inconsistencies in your characters. So maybe they change personalities in the middle of the book and you didn't realize that had happened. I know for me, when I'm writing fiction, I tend to learn a lot about my characters as I'm writing. So they do kind of morph and change in that second half of the book. In the first half, I need to go back and really ramp up that personality, that who they become, so it's consistent. For nonfiction, again, we want to make sure that each of your chapters build upon the other, and they're not just confusing readers by throwing in different ideas. There needs to be a logic and step-by-step assessment of what you are building towards in that lesson you are sharing in your book. So beta readers really bring fresh eyes that can pinpoint moments where your narrative loses momentum or clarity. So when it comes to selecting beta readers, we really want to make sure that they are your ideal audience. So I'm sorry, friends and family, that is often not the case. And as much as it can be very easy to want to lean on our friends and family, they're not always going to give us the critical feedback that we want from beta readers. So we want that honesty of hey, I got really confused here. And sometimes friends and family aren't willing to point those things out, or will just tell us yeah, it was a good read. But if they're not familiar with the genre, they're not also going to be familiar with what readers are expecting. In romance, we want a happy ever after, or at least a very satisfying ending there. In nonfiction, we want to make sure that if we had a problem, and that's why we were reading the book to get a solution, that by the end of that book, we did get a solution. If you are an entrepreneur who's writing a nonfiction book and you're doing it because you are speaking to your ideal client, you want to make sure that that is landing with your ideal clients. The way that beta readers react to your book is how you also want your general audience to react. And so if they're coming back to you confused or unclear, you don't want to be publishing that book yet, because you want to make sure you're coming forth with clarity so that everyone gets value or a great experience from your book. So another thing that beta readers are really helpful for is they can provide insight into the emotional resonance of your book. So emotional resonance is what hooks readers and keeps them engaged both in fiction and in nonfiction. So beta readers can kind of give you a sense of, hey, you hit the mark, or hey, it's not quite there yet, or hey, I'm not feeling any emotional resonance. So this can be really helpful feedback. So this can look like, was there a satisfying ending to your book? Like, did your characters really come alive off the page, or did they feel flat? Or Are you writing multiple points of view, but the characters felt the same? If you're writing a thriller, like did your twist really feel very genuine? And did the readers not see that coming whatsoever? So beta readers can really tell you how your story felt and see if that matches what you intended, or maybe it's like a happy surprise and you're like, I hadn't quite intended that, but I actually love that you experienced that. So these emotional reactions are just as important as some of the technical feedback that they might give you around plot holes or things not making sense. So beta readers can also help strengthen your confidence. I know that as we are writing books, our confidence can waver and we can start to second guess ourselves and be like, oh my gosh, this is garbage. I'm just gonna throw it out. No one's gonna read this. And that can be really validating when you get some beta feedback and it's like, oh my gosh, actually, this is better than I expected. On the flip side of that, it can also, create a little bit of a tougher skin. Sometimes we are going to get some feedback that we don't love, and that's the part of the feedback. And that is okay. Ultimately, you as the author get to filter what feedback works for you, what feedback doesn't work for you. So you are not in any way beholden to fix or correct every single thing that a beta reader says to you. So let's talk about, finding beta readers and what it looks like to work with them. So it's not just about saying, hey, can you read my book and then give me feedback? We want to create a little bit more structure around it. And I think this is the most important piece that I see a lot of authors miss, is creating the structure. So for my book, Write with Intention, I had a beta reader Google form that I created because I knew there were specific areas that I really wanted feedback, and it gave it a place for people to formally enter it versus just sending random emails and you kind of lose track of it, or text, whatever it is. So be really clear about what feedback it is that you need. And it's okay if you don't necessarily know what that feedback is, but you can, if you're talking about writing fiction, like talk about, were there any areas of the plot that were unclear? Do my characters feel dynamic? Like, you can start to ask a lot of these questions. But again, you want to be finding beta readers that are familiar with your genre and read a lot in that genre. What I recommend is you can have like a one-page contract or anything that just says, hey, I'm going to be a beta reader. It doesn't mean that necessarily all the changes that they suggest are going to be made. I also put a non-disclosure in there just to be like, do not share this manuscript with anyone because it is not published. And it's also not yours to just go put on the internet. I also like to put a deadline. I think this is really important. Sometimes if we're asking people, especially if they're doing it for free, that they're not necessarily going to jump on this right away and give you feedback within a week. Some people might, that's wonderful. But if you can give people maybe a month or 2 months in the process, that can also be really helpful to give them that time. So I do recommend, if you can put a one-page contract together, just to have them very clear on this is not for them to take, steal, don't input it into chat too, like any AI. We don't want your book being copied and pasted into AI for copyright reasons. Give them a deadline and then provide a place for them to give that feedback. So maybe you are asking it for all in one email. That's perfectly okay. Maybe you do create a Google form so they can easily submit that. Create a little bit of structure around your beta readers, like when you want the feedback, what types of feedback are important to you, so that they understand what's clear, the expectation for them. Because I think sometimes if we leave it open-ended, like give me feedback, it's like, well, what kind of feedback do you need? And like, how receptive are you to feedback? So being able to really provide them with a little bit of structure can go a long way in actually having you obtain that feedback. So where do you find these beta readers? I know this can be really hard to also think if we're ruling out our friends and family, like how in the heck do you find people? Well, I would go leverage social media is a great place for this. And that doesn't mean just necessarily everyone is going to want to read your book, but there are a lot of Facebook groups. I know Instagram, TikTok have really active following there. I do recommend that if you are finding someone on social media, that you're not just sending them your contract or just sending them, your manuscript right away. I would actually jump on a call with them, if it be a phone call or a video call. I know people hate phone calls, but making sure that they are a real person can go a long way in making sure that they're going to be a trusted partner in this process. So other places to find beta readers are in writing communities. Maybe you are part of local critique groups or different places locally. That can be a really great place to connect as well. There are local writing groups or even book clubs can be a great way. I would even go into local bookstores. You can also ask the owners, the communities there, because they often do a lot of different events. So there's different ways to tap into these communities. And you'd be surprised too, if you even ask your network or community, like, hey, do you know anyone that loves reading in this genre? that can also go a long way. So it's not to just completely rule out your friends and family, but it is maybe asking them like, hey, do you know anybody who loves reading in this genre? So that can be a great way that your friends and family can help out. So as I mentioned, I recently went through this process for my nonfiction book, Write with Intention, and I found this to be a very enlightening and wonderful process for me. I was very clear with what kind of feedback I wanted. A lot of it focused on the clarity of the concept of my ideas and if they built on one another. I also asked people if there was anything missing from the book, like was there something more that they needed? I asked what parts really resonated with them. I did ask about clarity, if there was anything that felt unclear or needed expanded on. I did give people an open-ended area to be like, is there anything else that you would add? So I really just spent time getting clear on what it is that feedback I needed in order to make sure that this book was really going to be working. And I have to tell you that I felt an overwhelming amount of response from this in a very good way. I was expecting to have to fix a lot because we are all very self-critical of our own work. And it turned out I had to fix very little, which was just such a true, honor to hear that. And it just felt like such a great wash of relief. And I just was really grateful for the feedback. I found that certain things that I thought were going to resonate with readers, like there were certain things that resonated more with them than I thought some things might. So it was just really cool to hear that feedback. But I definitely recommend diving into this process, providing a little bit of structure, guidance for them, and then just remembering that you do not have to accept every single piece of feedback. So it's really about how can you take the feedback and make sure that you're leveraging the right pieces. So this is why working with maybe 5 to 10 beta readers can be really helpful. I wouldn't do more than 10 because it's a lot to manage. But if you have 5, then you might end up having 3 people who say the same thing. And that's when you know that, hey, I should probably address this. But if only one person says something and you're kind of like, yeah, I get what they're saying, but that's not what I intended, then it's okay not to make that change. But I think if you have multiple people giving similar or the same feedback, then those are the items that you want to achieve and change. So again, if you only have like 2 beta readers, it might not be enough to really see a consistency of, hey, I got to make these changes. So I hope this video has helped you in thinking about what beta readers are, how to work with them, and then how to incorporate that feedback. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know, have you worked with beta readers and what was that experience like? Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.